Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Under Construction. This is episode number 91, and I'm your host, Ellis, otherwise known as the Admiral. I'm just gonna start doing it. I gotta bite the bullet, and I'm the Admiral. I don't know. If you guys have strong feelings one way or the other, feel free to voice them in the comments. If you have feelings on anything, feel free to voice them in the comments, because, as always, I'll be going over comments on this show. So, today we have a rather ambitious goal. As I've previously discussed, I would like to texture and scenic these 3 blocks here, as well as this, the rail yard, and the military base. So that is a pretty hefty thing. If we can't get that done this episode, there's no shame in that. But it is what I would like to get done. Now, that means there's no time to waste, so we're going to get right into it. I'm going to start laying down this texture here. Careful not to cut into the existing texture underneath the apartment building across the road there. And something right before I started got me thinking. I'm going to launch into stuff about the town here. I haven't really written any history for this town. I did the majority of the history for Olive, and I did a good portion of the history for Adams. But I have not done anything for the entirety of the Mason Valley at all. The entirety of the valley, I suppose. Or whatever we named this river. The Nosum River. Not really, though. It's not the Nosum River. I haven't done anything for really Mason's Landing or Mason Valley. Which, I mean, I really should probably do. Now that I have most of the infrastructure and the buildings and everything in place, I can really write a history that's based around... Oh, why is this not 10-meter grid? Or 5-meter grid? Hold on. Oh, also, route layer. So, yeah, I can really start writing that now, and I really should. That way, I'll have it all squared away, I'll have it all understood, I'll have all the weird quirks of the place explained, its connection to the canal, and boats, and portaging boats over the mountains instead of going around the peninsula, which, of course, was only really done because it was a lot safer to do it this way if you had just a barge load. Otherwise, you risk getting caught in storms and such. Similar to Cape Cod, I would imagine that around here, the overland route as a load of cargo would be safer for you than to go around the tip of the peninsula, because generally that's where the poorest weather is. Okay, so we've got texture. And this is about as much texture as I really want to do. I know I want this area to be mostly trees, this area in here. So that's going to be that. I do have to put a thing around this park, yada yada yada. I'm not sure what texture I want to do over here. I'm going to spend some time working in this area first. So we need the ballast. We've been going with this dirt beneath commercial buildings as to not represent a lawn. One of the things I may do, actually... Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll do that. So I'm going to... This track is already invisible in the street, basically. So I'm going to place a couple new spline points, and I'm going to sink the track into the ground so only the rails are visible. That way, what we can do is we can build the parking lot, quote-unquote, out of gravel. Or gravel texture, I should say. And just have the rails exposed. Now, the other thing I probably should do is use a rusty rails-only texture for this segment, and, more importantly, perhaps, disconnect the spline point at both ends. That way, you don't have this weird stuff with, well, that doesn't look bad, I guess. It could look worse. Let's go grab that real quick. No time to waste, no time to hesitate. And there we go. So, yeah, I did think about, very briefly, some things regarding the history of the town here. And I think that got raised back up. That's kind of weird. No? No, I guess it's fine. Okay. Not the least of which being that there was likely a flood at some point, because we know, based on the fact that there's a canal way here, we know that this was a drawbridge at some point. Obviously, right now it is not. It is no longer a drawbridge, and it no longer looks like a drawbridge, so it's not like... I mean, I suppose it could be a vertical lift bridge that had the towers removed. There is a precedent for that. It's in South Troy, I believe it's High Street Bridge. You can look up old pictures of it, and as we showed it on the New England, Berkshire, and Western Model Railroad, back in the 50s, it did in fact have a lift span in the middle. The span still exists. The towers are gone, however, because due to the lack of tall ships heading up the Hudson River to that point, there was no reason to continue maintaining a lift span. There are still several drawbridges up that way, but the clearances are with respect to boats, mostly tugs and barges, that are transiting the Erie Canal. So, they don't really need that much in the way of vertical clearance. Now, I'm thinking about ships a lot too, because I've been sort of binging a YouTuber that goes by Drachfinel, Drachfinel, I believe. Off the top of my head, he is a YouTuber. He focuses mainly on warships, generally in the World War II period, but not necessarily. He does things like the 5-minute guides and verses and the dry dock where he answers your questions and breakdowns of major naval battles. He's a really great resource for all sorts of warship-related information, and just on top of that, he makes some really, really interesting videos of his own. It is a fantastic thing to just listen to at work for me, because it's all relatively simple content. There isn't a lot in the way of visuals. There are some which uh-oh, I don't know why that was necessary. There are some which sink are actually quite heavy with the visuals, in that they show ship locations during major battles and stuff like that, but it isn't really critical. He does a really good job of explaining everything that's on the screen, even a lot of times to a relative layperson like myself. And you don't have to watch, basically, if you don't want to, I guess, or if you can't. The dry docks especially, he really doesn't do visuals on the dry docks, and those are some of his more interesting videos, because he just basically fields viewer questions on warship and warship-related topics. You know, oh, what if a naval battle had been this way, or whatever. You know, one of the most interesting ones that I have heard from him to this point was if you were asked, what if the Italian Navy had the strength of the Japanese Navy throughout the Second World War? Not just at the beginning, but throughout. So, every time the Japanese Navy commissioned a battleship, for example, the Italian Navy also gets a battleship. Of their own design, I might add, not, it's not the Italians just randomly being handed Yamato-class warships. It's like, oh, they commissioned the Yamato and the other one. I should know this. Whatever, the other one. It'll hit me later. So the Italians get 2 more of their Littoral class, which were their main battleships, I believe. I'm picking up a lot of information, but I'm getting so much at once that it's almost, it's nearly incomprehensible, the amount that I am receiving in terms of information. I just can't take it all in. sometimes you just sort of zone out and you come back and it's like, oh, this sounds really interesting, but I don't know where we started. That's me a lot with his videos. But it's not, certainly not his fault. He does an excellent job of creating an endless supply of very engaging content. And either because I am zoning out after hours and hours of listening to it, or alternately, as is more often the case, I'm also doing work. So I start to focus on the work a little bit, and I lose track of what question he's answering and what the specifics of it are. But that doesn't make it any less engaging, really. I just sort of tune back in when it gets to another point, or I rewind the video just a little bit. I have a mini, I don't like this one thing about Twitch. I don't really use Twitch, ever. But I did the other week, I guess, because I wanted to watch somebody stream hardcore Minecraft. This is before I decided, I'm alone in the office sometimes, let me just play it myself. But particularly when I don't have a lot to do. Naturally, when I'm busy, I'm not playing Minecraft at the same time. That would be a feat. And I ended up looking up this guy who's, again, like I've explained before, he was quite a popular streamer by the looks, and he was playing hardcore Minecraft. He was Italian, and I only spoke Italian, so I didn't understand what he was saying. But I could pick up a word or two here and there, and I didn't really need to know what he was saying to understand Minecraft. I know the game pretty well. Although I did learn during my hardcore playthrough that I don't know the crafting recipes for any of the new stuff. And the crafting book is really helpful, but it's only really helpful to a point. There comes a point where you don't know what materials you need for these things, so the crafting book will never show you that you have unlocked new recipes by having those materials in your inventory, because you don't know what materials those are. And I wasn't about to just craft random things to see if they were the materials that I needed. It was for the composter and the grindstone. I eventually figured out the composter, and then I went to a village and picked up a grindstone. I was not going to look it up because I was trying to do it. I was trying to do my hardcore run, my first hardcore run, I suppose. Not my first ever, but my first hardcore run. With no outside support and no support from anything that might even push the limits of what could be considered cheating. Now, I don't think that using the F3 menu is cheating, or using the advanced tooltips with F3 and H is cheating, or anything like that. And it's a single-player game. When it's a single-player game, cheating is what you make of it, really. But I wanted to do it with as little assistance as possible, I suppose. So I didn't look anything up on the wiki. I didn't Google any recipes. I just sort of racked my brain until I figured it out. I didn't use F3 at all to get coordinates and stuff like that. I used maps and compasses and such to navigate myself, which was certainly it was a great experience, honestly, because not knowing, this way is north without looking at the sun or whatever, it was honestly kind of fun. It really left me scratching my head sometimes, and it definitely made it just that much harder. Which wasn't really my goal, but it was just to sort of constrain myself to, this is the most vanilla of vanilla Minecraft that I can get. I'm playing hardcore. I want to be hardcore. Now, I want to not interfere with this experience in any way, shape, or form. Because I didn't just play hardcore just to play hardcore, obviously. I didn't do it just to brag about it. I did it because I wanted to experience the feeling of hardcore Minecraft. And I feel like, based on what I was doing, the experience is definitely enhanced by not being able to go look something up. Having to figure stuff out on your own. If you're lost, you're really lost. That sort of thing. It really did enhance the experience for me. And I do use, I hesitate to use the word enhance, but I do actually mean that. It did enhance the experience. So, yeah. I did that until... Okay, this was how it ended. I'm sure you guys want to hear this, actually. So, my hardcore run, my first hardcore run ended, because I did start a second one after I died, by falling down a hole. It wasn't the blazes that I fought, or the wither skeletons. It wasn't being jumped by a half dozen zombies in a cave, which these are all things that happened. It wasn't... oh goodness, what's some other really obnoxious stuff that happened to me in that playthrough? I didn't get in too much trouble. My second one I got into far more trouble far more quickly, but I'm still alive in my second playthrough for now. I don't remember what my score was though, so that's kind of unfortunate. I should have taken a screenshot. I was just sort of stunned that I died. What else did I do? I did plenty of stupid things in that playthrough and nearly, got myself lost or killed or whatever. The various shipwrecks and stuff that I dived on and, somehow didn't drown myself. Yeah, no, none of that killed me. I was traipsing through the jungle looking for chickens of all things because I had a extreme and severe shortage of arrows, and I really didn't want to go fight more skeletons, and I hadn't found a spawner, of course. And so I wanted to find some chickens, of course, because I remembered, oh yeah, chickens you can make arrows with the feathers. And I wanted eggs to make, like, pumpkin pie or something. And there was a jungle right behind my house. So I go into the jungle, I'm hopping through the jungle, whatever, and I didn't notice this hole. This hole opened up, basically, in the ground beneath where I was running. I was, you're just sort of hopping through jungle leaves and stuff. The jungle has a lot of pitfalls on its own, but, going, and then suddenly I'm falling. And it wasn't a ravine, it was a pit cave, or an air vent, as Leibold would call it. And it just went straight down. I did, in fact, have feather falling on my boots, but it was only feather falling one, because I didn't have any books. Because I didn't have any cows, either. I had one book that I got the leather from a cow that I found on an adventure, and I killed it. I try not to just randomly kill the animals that I find in the Minecraft world, because I am aware of the fact that it is a limited resource, and I don't want to just do that. So, yeah, I found this cow, I killed it, I brought the one book back. I enchanted all my stuff at really low level, and I went into the nether, and I did this, that, and the other thing, and I got, like, potions and stuff. I didn't actually brew any potions. Well, I brewed awkward potions to get ready for potions that I would need. I anticipated wanting to make potions of water breathing and potions of night vision so that I could see underwater to dig up more buried treasure and stuff, because I was right in an ocean, and I found a lot of sunken ships and ruins and such. And Trident guys are no joke. Learned that in my second playthrough. I mean, I should have known from you dead, but Trident guys are no joke. So, yeah, I was just hopping through the jungle, and I fell. And I tried to, like, get towards a ledge, because I knew that, well, if I survive this with half a heart, it's daytime, there are no mobs around me, I'm in sunlight, like, I'll be fine if I can survive, and I didn't think about the water bucket, which is the thing that really did me in. I had a water bucket on my hotbar, and I didn't think to put it down as I was coming in for a very not soft and not subtle crunchy landing on stone at the bottom of this pit. So, I died. Yep. That was how my hardcore playthrough ended. Bet you guys didn't expect that one. Didn't even get to the end. I got to the Nether, which was cool and all, but I didn't get to the end. I didn't even find a stronghold. I didn't find any above-ground structures aside from a handful of villages, which they were all garbage. I found a much better village on my second hardcore world now, and I hung out there for a little while, and I was tempted to move, but it was a good few clicks from my home, and I didn't even have a horse at that point. Although, lucky me, there was a chest in the village that had, and I do feel bad stealing from the villagers, but whatever, a chest in the village that had a thing of horse armor and a saddle. Now I have like 5 saddles, because I went into the Nether and raided the hell out of a Nether fortress to get a bunch of diamonds. Man, mining is boring when you don't have much. It's also time consuming, and again, since I'm playing at downtime at work, I don't have a lot of time to play, so I just sort of, I keep it on pause and I play like 15 minutes when I can. And so spending time mining really wasn't great for me, because it just burned so much time. It just all went away, and I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I was very diamond poor in my second world, or I have been to this point. Although now I have 9, all from the Nether Fortress. I ended up getting a total of 7 through all of my different endeavors before this. And so I made a pick, and then I made another portal, and then I made an enchanting table and a diamond hoe. Just kidding, I made a diamond sword. You gotta make the hoe for the achievement, And I know this is not the Minecraft show, but this is just on my mind. Because I am really eager to get back to my hardcore world, but I don't want to play it while I'm here. Partly because it involves getting out my work laptop and whatever and setting that up. And I just don't feel like it. But part of it because I've got a Minecraft server to play on here. Like half of the reason that I installed Minecraft for the trip to Promontory, because I realized, when I'm on my home Wi-Fi, the rules of the WSP internet don't actually apply, so I can download whatever I want. I almost downloaded TeamViewer, but whatever. I didn't go through with that one. And I realized, they don't apply. I can download whatever I want. I want to have Minecraft on me, so if we go and play on the server while we're on the trip, where I have the opportunity to play on the server on the trip, I can. I think, because I wanted to start working the SAR area, which is probably like 90% done now as of this video. So, I wanted to work on that, but I didn't get to while I was on the trip. It ended up being that installing Minecraft was basically useless to me. But when I got back, I wanted to play on the server, realized that I can't connect to the server over WSP intranet. Our LAN, or our VPN, I should say, is actually the right word for it. I couldn't connect to the Minecraft server through that because it won't let Minecraft through. And so that's when I realized, well, I guess I can start a hardcore world and play hardcore and, do that instead. And, that was a great idea. I just was depressed for like half the day after I died. So, whatever. It gives me a little bit more game time, I guess, while I have a break in the action there. I don't remember what else I was saying. I've gotten into some real pickles so far in this new world of mine. I got assaulted by a bunch of zombies once again, which I really... There was a point where I bugged out of a cave because I heard one baby zombie. I didn't even see it. I was just like, no, I'm not dealing with that. I'll come back later. I did get chased by a leather-clad baby zombie, like from my house to the sea, because I realized that I could negate its speed advantage by jumping in the water, and it worked. It worked well enough. What else? So I did that. This is the same thing, so just whatever. Yeah, getting nearly killed by wither skeletons on more than one occasion. One of them being because I noticed that my armor wasn't displaying properly in my inventory, or, on my hotbar. It wasn't showing that I was wearing armor. And so I went to change that. I went into my inventory to change that while I was standing right next to another fortress, and a wither skeleton jumped me. That was not the smartest thing. That could have gotten me killed, and it very nearly did. I haven't actually had any run-ins with lava, which has been fairly nice. What else? I mean, getting stuck in the nether surrounded by blazes with really nowhere to run and no solid non-flammable blocks. I didn't have enough in the way of... This guy's got 2 driveways. I didn't have enough in the way of cobblestone when I went into the nether, and I paid for that dearly with a lot of panic. So yeah. Yeah, but I actually eventually made it out. Actually, that was in my first world, wasn't it? Yeah, that was in my first world. Second world, I went in much better prepared, many more solid blocks, and I actually had a much easier time in the fortress just because it was laid out a lot better. The one that I had, it didn't even have any loot chests in the first world, which was really kind of unfortunate and annoying, because it meant that, basically I wandered around the fortress, nearly got killed for, a couple of very important things, nether wart and blaze rods, so I could brew potions, but really nothing else. I really wanted a saddle, and I didn't want to spend all that time fishing for one, and I definitely didn't want to trigger a pillager raid in a village. First of all, because it involves attacking pillagers, and pillagers are also nothing to mess with in hardcore. Certainly not without some really good armor and a really good sword and lots of arrows, because they've all got ranged attacks. They're like skeletons on steroids. But also because the Ravagers are just brutal. One nearly killed me in my full diamond armor on the Horseman server, the public server, because we had a raid on the Narrows, which now all the villagers are dead there, so we won't be having another one. Which is unfortunate, because all the villagers are dead. But that is the one pretty foolproof way to get a saddle, if you can't find one otherwise. If you run into a group of pillagers, which aren't that uncommon, and run into a village shortly thereafter, which also is very not uncommon. Villages are pretty straightforward to find, typically. Then you will trigger a raid, so long as you kill the banner holder of the pillagers. The leader, I don't remember what he's called, the something or other. He's head pillager. He's King Han. So as long as you've done that, you will in fact instigate a raid, and then if you can kill the Ravager, you get a saddle. Which, there was a point in time where I'm not going to really weigh in on the craftable saddles debate. I'm not unhappy the way it is right now, but I understand why a lot of people want them to be craftable. But if there is a foolproof way to get a saddle, that's it right there, so long as you can keep yourself from getting killed. Again, the Ravagers are brutal. They are really brutal. So, that's 2 blocks done. We did that in 30 minutes. That's not ideal. That was a lot of fences, but it's not ideal. Alright, so let's do a comment real quick. PR Productions. We left a bunch of comments. He left timestamps. I didn't get the chance to go through the timestamps and look what they were. But the first one is his favorite engine is the T1 Duplex. First of all, my man. Second of all, I heard Johnson's theme in a random radio advertisement the other day, which was kind of funny. Of course, you know, it's royalty-free music. It's stock music, so it's the kind of thing you do hear from place to place, from time to time. And on the subject of music in the Iron Horseman Chronicles, because we are no longer a channel that's considerable for monetization, we have tossed around the idea of using quote-unquote real music in the Iron Horseman Chronicles from here on out. I mean, it wouldn't really hurt us any, I suppose. It would just preclude us from monetizing those episodes in the future were we ever to meet the requirements again. Not that that's a big deal. We never were in it for the money, certainly. But, I mean, part of me just doesn't want to be taking copyrighted content without permission, even if it won't hurt us, per se. But at the same time, I can't totally resist the idea that we can have some really cool things with really cool music. You know, even popular, modern-ish music, because who cares? You know, does anyone really care? Unless we're dealing with Captain Marvel here, does anyone really care if the music is in era? I know Captain Marvel is... I just had to poke fun at the fact that there was a song that was like 2 years out of... like it was played like 2 years early, which I understand that, like, allegedly it was supposed to be played from the jukebox on the spaceship, which doesn't make sense because, you know, obviously it wouldn't have existed yet. Spoiler, there's a jukebox on a spaceship, Captain Marvel. Good movie, by the way. But, I mean, they did also do it, and I believe this was a change. I can believe it, this is the conspiracy theory, put your tinfoil hats on, that they altered it after the fact to make it very clear that the music was not coming from the jukebox, and that it was just action music playing on its own as part of the movie's soundtrack, because of the aforementioned discrepancy with the timing of the music. I need water. I don't know. I didn't even really notice the the piece of music or understand its significance, or certainly I didn't know that it was out of era. It sounded fine to me. And like I said, it was only like something like 2 years out of era. So it wasn't that much of a big deal, is what I'm saying. Of course, people have different opinions on that. I can understand if you know, in some cases thought it was too much, or thought it was like too much blatant feminism or something to that effect, or if you just thought it was, you know, it was dumb. It was a dumb decision by the directors and producers to use that song when there were plenty of other ones that could have fit coming from the jukebox. Again, I particularly like the theory that it was supposed to be coming from the jukebox, and then they realized that it didn't make any sense, so they changed it so that it wasn't coming from the jukebox. Again, yeah, I you know, it has some validity to it, and I can understand if, you know, I can understand getting pretty well into the production of the movie and having all these songs, song rights purchased, and going, this one's going to go here, this one's going to go here, this one's going to go here, and then going through the final production, somebody brings up, like, hey, you know, it's, you know, that song doesn't really make any sense. and you go, oh crap, or they realize that people are going to think because of the way the scene is put together that it is that way, or that was supposed to be that way, and so then they're going to bring it up incessantly, and that's when you go, well, now we have to change the scene to make it very clear that that was not what we meant when we framed it in this manner. But they did leave, I don't know, I feel like they could have, I feel like they could have been better about that. I feel like that could have been better done, even if it was a mistake. That the song appears to be emanating from the jukebox in the first place. I don't know. I mean, discuss, I guess. But, I mean, the internet has discussed it quite extensively, so I don't necessarily know if there's too much more to say. I'm just weighing in. Remember, if you'd like me to weigh in on a particular topic, feel free to post it down below. In fact, some people have, and it seems to be a meme, and I don't know where it came from. I have prepared an answer, and I'll get to it later. If you look down in the comments, you'll probably know exactly the comments specifically of last episode. I mean, it will become very apparent what I'm talking about very quickly. I just don't want to draw that much attention to it, because again, it seems kind of memey and trolly. Like, I'm sure that, well, I don't know. I don't recognize these people. I do recognize a lot of usernames. There are a lot of repeat offenders in my comment section. I'm joking when I say repeat offenders, of course. I very much appreciate all the comments that I get. Even the silly ones, even the memey ones, as we will, again, get to a little bit later. So, yeah. I said the T1 is your favorite PRR engine, or favorite engine overall. Well, I mean, I certainly think it's deserving. It was a unique class of locomotive, being that it was a beautifully streamlined duplex. It was a passenger duplex. It had a very special streamlining on it. Of course, designed by Raymond Loewy. Gorgeous, gorgeous locomotive. Had its own set of problems, of course, as I'm sure you know if you are a fan of the engine. The high-speed wheel slip, which can be attributed in many cases to overloading and engineers not knowing their engine particularly well, but in the grand scheme, an engine really shouldn't be doing that anyway. You have the aerodynamics of the locomotive sort of being detrimental to the crew's ability to see in some cases, because it would just pull soot down from the stack, and it would make... I mentioned it, I think, in the Johnson short stories once or twice, that the streamlining, particularly the prototype streamlining, so on 6110 and 6111, it had the unfortunate quality of just drawing these long soot lines along the side of the locomotive, which, aren't really apparent, but most of the pictures of the T1s, especially at speed, are, well, old and grainy, and you wouldn't really be able to tell anyway, and furthermore, they're black and white, so doesn't really help you there. Oh, look who it is.
Hi.
Hello, we're talking about the T1.
Ah, I'm gonna...
Yeah. So... Oh, hey, wait.
Yes.
I wanted you to know that Ella was in the most recent Locomotive Versus.
She went?
She tied. I can show you what she tied again. It was Texas Pacific 316. Very similar engine. Very, very similar engine, actually.
Oh, cool.
And that one's still in service, so we might even be able to go visit it running someday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway. For those who don't know, Ella is C&O 377. She owns a model of it. And it lives at the Providence Northern, as I've probably mentioned in the podcast multiple times. It did actually get brought up to me, hey, are you ever going to run that thing? Is it... Because it sits on like a dead-end stretch of track, if you look up on Google Images Providence Northern Railroad, I think it should be like in the top row. It's a really super grainy image, but the sign that it's parked in front of, which is at the very edge of the layout at the end of track, it says Steamtown or Bust. There is a particular member of the club who has a particular vendetta against steam locomotives, the layout being set in 1985. You know, sort of makes sense for him too. But he's, you know, Steamtown for him is off the side of the layout onto the floor. But I'll tell you guys a secret. He owns an 080. Allegedly, he's been seen running it around. Although I think since he's actually donated it to the club, and it might actually be in Providence Northern scheme, or in lettering, I suppose, and in a box somewhere. I don't know what ended up happening to JB's engine, JB's steam engine, but I do know that according to many, it existed at one point. So, you know, everyone has a place in their heart for steam, even if they hate it. Even if they say they hate it, I should say. So, yeah. What else? We were talking about the T1 and its unfortunate problems. Also the fact that, God, the valve gear on the T1s was just horrifically, unnecessarily complicated not for no reason, I suppose, because they were like, we're going to do poppet valves because they're really good at speed. Unfortunately, that didn't work out because the metallurgy on the poppet valves was kind of subpar due to, you know, there was a big war going on. You might have heard of it. And that meant that the poppet valves had some issues running at extremely high speed, particularly during wheel slip. They had a lot of issues with deformation, and doing maintenance on the valve gear itself was awful, to say the least. Just the way it was put together. You would have to remove good portions of the engine in some cases to get to the valve gear boxes. Oh well. Let's see, do I have bleachers? Empty bleachers. Yeah. Kind of funny to have full bleachers. I wonder if I could set up like a baseball game going on. Anyway. So, the, T1s. The T1s got a lot better. That's the thing. I mean, not only did the Q2s improve upon the duplex and the slipping issue by adding computerized, or not computerized, but mechanical actually, and that's the coolest part about them, mechanical anti-slip mechanisms, which worked independently on each of the two driver sets, which, God, how cool is that? But they had, well, if you look at 5550 and what it's going to be given, aside from all the quote-unquote modern fixings of the Pennsylvania Railroad, including cab signals, the engines were given, or that one will be given, or at least, okay, two of them were given different valve gear. That is Caprotti in one case. No, not Caprotti. It was Franklin Type B poppet. It just looks like Caprotti, I believe. And one was given Walsharts. So, or Walshirts? Walshirts? Which, of course, was like standard for locomotives at the time, particularly Baldwin-built locomotives. And the Baldwin Locomotive Works being very buddy-buddy with the Pennsylvania Railroad, the duplex was more of a Baldwin design or a Baldwin idea than a PRR idea. Hence, as evidenced by the fact that the first large duplex in the U.S., I should say, because there was, I think, one other that was just kind of bizarre. Or I guess you could technically call them whatever. There are some weird engines that you could technically call duplexes, but by and large, the first large duplex in the United States was the B&O N1, which was a 4444 with the first set of pistons mounted backwards. It was, I'm fairly certain it was a Baldwin-built engine for the B&O, because the Baldwin managed to convince the B&O that this was the future. And the B&O didn't really like it. It didn't run very well. It had maintenance problems because the rear set of cylinders were cozied up with the firebox, which causes problems, of course, with maintenance because you just have them exposed to all the crap from the firebox, and also it limits your firebox size, which is a problem, especially if you want to go at high speed for a long time, which a passenger engine, of course, would. So the N1 came and went. We've had at least one locomotive versus with it, but it wasn't a spectacular locomotive. I believe it got converted later in life, or it was just sort of scrapped quietly early to little fanfare and to few people caring. Fewer people noticing and fewer of them caring is actually a really elegant way to put that, if I really wanted to script that line. But yeah, I think I can move on from the duplexes now. I've talked about them quite a bit. If you want me to talk about them more, of course, as I have said a multitude of times, just bring it up in a comment, and I will again, especially if you have specific questions or comments or concerns or whatever. Before I get to the next question, or comment, or concern, I would like to bring something up, something that I would like to do on this channel, and I just want to know what the response is. I've gotten a half-decent response from the other people that have asked, but of course they aren't my main viewers and commenters, well, sometimes. Give or take, I guess. That's all I use. And I just wanted to think what the response would be, and also what you would really want me to do with it. So, I want to do a series where I just read things. And that sounds sort of bizarre at first, but if anyone has read The Case of the Stranded Streamliner, which is a chronicle of the city of San Francisco getting caught in snow on Donner Pass in 1952, I believe, I would love to do a sort of almost like an audiobook feeling format of that. That's what I would like to do, where I just read it out loud. I go through almost as I did, particularly as I did with The Zombie Train or The End of Days. And that's, if it was written better, I'm sure it would be a better video. But it's not bad as is. And I don't think my voice is horrendous. You guys certainly seem to come around for it quite a bit, and I can do a lot of inflection. You guys know, if you watch the Iron Horseman Chronicles, that I don't have a lot of trouble doing a lot of accents, or little changes to my voice, and keeping them fairly consistent. At least I think so. And so, I think I would really enjoy doing that, and I'm curious if you guys would enjoy it as well. Again, the Case of the Stranded Streamliner is certainly some place where I would start, because it is a very riveting tale, and it's one I know fairly well, and it's one I would love to share, particularly for those who have not read it and do not have the time or the inclination to read it, because I know, let's be honest, reading can be great, but reading can also be boring and time-consuming. And if you want to do something else in the background, for example, work, or study, or drive, anything that takes your eyes, listening to something like an audiobook, I mean, it's helpful. I'll just say that. It's helpful. There's a reason audiobooks are such a large market as they are. I'm not going to pretend that they aren't. I'm not going to sort of try to re-explain what makes audiobooks special. Because, I mean, really? Do I need to? I wouldn't think so. So, yeah. I'm going to go grab some abandoned track real quick, and I'll be right back to Mason's Valley. Mason Landing. Mason Valley. Where's the nearest abandoned track? It's up here. Okay, zoom in. I need this track. Okay, so, yeah, between the case of the Strand Streamliner and something like the document from the White Pass, for those who are unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, there was a document published by, I think the U.S. military, detailing them keeping the White Pass and Yukon open through a winter. It's like I said, it's quite riveting, and it's very interesting, and it's frankly kind of amazing to see what these men went through to try and keep the railroad open. But, that's that. That's one of the things that I was thinking of. In the more lighthearted note, reading out poems by Poem for Your Sprog on Reddit, or that sort of thing. Or really anything you request, aside from, like, naughty fan fiction. Although I really don't have shame. I could probably do that, too. I would just have to put a tag on the video saying, hey, don't watch this if you're faint of heart. I don't know. I'd need to work on my sultry, probably, to pull that off. Anyway, 41, I'm running Tane SP3, and thanks for the info, PR Productions. Oh, that was about Hercules. That was about running 51. I really hope you get that to work, because, as I've probably said, that's one of my favorite engines. Naturally, the T1 is too, but, Hercules being Hercules. I was originally supposed to voice Hercules until we got Eric to do it. There were a couple other people I had lined up, but, either way, I'm not unhappy with how that turned out. So, yeah. That's, let me just, no, that looks terrible. We're not doing that. I'll put some saplings over here when I come by to do trees. That's what I'll do. That'll make it look good. Okay, so we have that, Let's do the military base. How much time do we have left? Alright, just over an hour. I think that actually makes me fairly comfortable with getting all this done in a reasonable amount of time. So I'm going to cover this with this texture and... Although part of me wants to do it with like a pavement or a gravel, I think this is best as a bottom coat, and then we can layer on some gravelly stuff once that's wrapped up. And grassy areas as well, because this probably isn't going to be perfectly maintained, although it is a military base. I'm sure they have plenty of people that they can tell to go out there and sort of mop the rain and trim the grass with this pair of scissors or something like that. Either way, I know I want a strip of this running along the edge here because it's right up against the fence. Okay. 4943, at the end of the current commodities there should be a plus symbol. Click on that and another window will pop up allowing you to add more commodities to the car. I'm aware of that, but the issue is with trains coming out of portals in the middle of a session, I can't do that with. That is a great solution for cars that will never leave the railroad, and that I fully know where they will be for the entirety of the 24-hour session, and that they will return to exactly the same spot. But I cannot guarantee that in any case, and it would pose an operational constraint that, I mean, frankly, a real railroad wouldn't really have to deal with, and I don't want to deal with either. particularly the issue ends up being I have this car or I have a train full of cars that are coming from off map. Some of those might be empty and have to be loaded with, again, for example, an SAP commodity, and if they're not ready for it, it might just not go into the car. That's what I'm concerned about. It's not the ones that already exist here. I could stage plenty of those cars in the yard and just know in the back of my mind that, yes, these cars are the ones for SAP commodities, and when I set up the operations, they have to come and grab these cars and these specifically, and none of the other box cars will suffice. I could do that. Unfortunately, that doesn't solve all the problems. So I am avoiding doing that because I don't want to start working with a stopgap when I really should be focusing my efforts on making an actual solution. In this case, it's good enough is not good enough. Once it solves all the problems, then it will in fact be good enough. And that, like I said, entails redoing some existing boxcars that are freeware on the download station to hold the new commodities, and then re-uploading them, preferably with a skin for Tolbrand or various Tolbrand industries or railroads or whatever. But not necessarily. One of the other things I haven't done on my Tolbrand Plus map is I haven't actually come up with or added any other railroads. Well, actually, that's not true. Any other functioning railroads, any other railroads that still exist into the time that we're dealing with here. They have all been absorbed. There is merit adding something like, something like a remnant of the Railroad and Navigation Company, or the Mining and Navigation Company. I kept calling it the Railroad and Navigation Company, the Everett Lake Railroad and Navigation Company. It's the Everett Lake Mining and Navigation Company, and it is a railroad that runs from Akron, I think, which is far to the east, up into the Volga Mountains, and down. It terminated. Where did it terminate? It terminated at Summit or so, or at Skyline, I think, or thereabouts. I'd need to look at the map again, but it terminates way up in the mountains. It was just to bring stuff down from the mountains and to do things around Everett Lake, which is way up there in the mountains. It's a very large, almost think of like a Lake Champlain sort of deal. It's just a very large lake that's way up there, and far from an ocean, or et cetera, et cetera. So that's Everett Lake. And so the railroad was chartered along with another to compete with Mercer Shipping, which had a monopoly over traffic going in that direction from the town of Akron, etc. And therefore, and again was one of two competing railroads to beat out the Mercer Shipping Company, which was an interesting thing. I need to go back and look at my history once again, the history that I wrote, of course. But if I recall correctly, Mercer Shipping actually ends up taking over, I think, part of the Everett Lake, and it's the railroad, or at least its namesake. I think it takes over its namesake. Sort of how Pan Am is a airline in a railroad skin. But it's really a railroad that happens to have adopted an airline's, or a former airline's, logo and name. Why? I don't know. To my understanding, it wasn't really something they intended to do, but they bought a bunch of stuff, like legal stuff, and ended up with the trademark for the name, and so they decided to use it because it was fairly recognizable. I would assume that would be the main motivation for doing something like that, because it happens to be very recognizable. Where was I? Yeah, talking about the Everett Lake Railroad. That's the only other railroad that I've made so far that isn't represented in track. At least its competitor, the other railroad that was created at the same time, the Akron-Macon Railroad, it actually did a lot better at first. That's something worth mentioning historically. But I mean, it's really neither here nor there. It's just worth mentioning. And then following that, yeah, I think it ended up banding with Mercer Shipping. I don't really remember. I would need to look at my documents again and just see. And that's one of the things that's really in flux right now because I'm in the process of writing that railroad's history. In the end, the Everett Lake gets absorbed by the VMR, and most of the main line is abandoned. Although it might have been abandoned actually before that. I'm not totally certain. The VMR doesn't run to Akron, though. That's the one thing. That's the takeaway here. The VMR runs as far as Everett Lake, and even then, that is on a branch that, I mean, really doesn't do a whole lot. It is kept in service by one or two mines and other industries that are way down at its end. I'm sure you guys have heard this one before. And, you know, because of that, it really only sees a handful of trains, and it's got some weird infrastructure things. The one claim to fame, I suppose, of the Everett Lake, besides its just vastness, the railroad, I should say, the Mining and Navigation Company, which I kept saying it was the Everett Lake Railroad and Navigation Company, but it is not. Because originally, the hope was that you would have these two companies, and one would handle mining and navigation, and the other one would handle the railroading. But that did not happen, and they ended up being chartered as competitors. But they retained their cooperative names. Which it took quite a while for the Everett Lake to live up to its namesake of being an actual mining and or navigation company, because it took them quite a long time to get up to Everett Lake historically. And the reason it took them such a long time is that, like I said, their claim to fame was that they built their entire pass over the east side of the Volga Mountains without a single tunnel. They were the only railroad to cross, quote-unquote, the Volga Mountains, and they have without a tunnel, and they have the highest mountain pass without a tunnel in the region. The consequence of that being that the line is built in a very non-linear fashion, almost. There are no switchbacks, at least not anymore, but it wasn't built in a way that was conducive to running high volumes of trains or trains at high speeds. And, I mean, on the bright side, they did end up getting a lot of good deposits, and they had a fairly robust railroad, which would not really be knocked out by things like winter storms and such, because of the areas that they stuck to in order to not build tunnels. Didn't keep them from building snow sheds, by the way. But, yeah, that's, you know, they had an advantage in that way, but the railroad, while being just fine for, like, 1860s engineering when it was built, come 1900, it's really sort of lacking. And again, the Everett Lake as a whole just sort of hobbled along. It was never a powerhouse. And the Akron-Macon was in a lot better shape when it was bought out by the Zion and Skyline, which should have really been renamed the Zion and Akron, or the Akron to Zion, which would have been kind of cool because then it would have been A to Z. But the Zion and Skyline had really all of the power in that merger. The folks at the Akron-Macon Railroad really didn't want a part of that, and it was a hostile takeover. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was a totally hostile takeover so that they could get a route to the east. Anyway. That's that. What's next? Oh, that's all the other ones. Alright, let's do Ice's comment then. So, Ellis, get another monitor so you can change screen while recording, as it would help you out in the long run too. Okay, so here's the thing. I have another monitor. I have owned it for quite some time. My desk is not large enough for a second monitor, and I'm not going to replace my desk. I very much like my desk. The other thing is the second monitor is reserved not just for the server computer when I need to troubleshoot things, although that matters less these days, because it's plugged into a television. It's literally plugged into the living room television, which is a pretty good-sized TV. Yeah, that matters less with regard to that, but it is useful for troubleshooting. It's kind of a traveling monitor around here. But it's also reserved for Madison's desktop whenever that comes about. Doubly, or, secondly, or thirdly, I guess, it's a backup monitor in case this one ever dies. Not that that really matters if I'm going to use it in parallel. Because, of course, I can always go, alright, now this monitor is no longer going to be used in parallel, I'm going to take this off, and this is yours now, Madison, or let me take this off and use it for this, or that, or the other thing. You're saying it would be useful during streams, and I agree. But, like I said, the issue would be that I very simply don't have the room. If I did, I would actually be able to do some really, I guess, much cooler things during the Terminus podcast, because I'm limited by the fact that I have one screen there, or at the very least I could record the video at 720p. I put it out at 720, but if anyone's ever really taken a kind of tight look at the Terminus podcast, like visually, at the quality of the video, it's because it's being filmed at like a 480p window or so, down in the corner of my screen, because the rest of my screen is taken up by things like the document and the actual recording software and all of the other things that I have to keep track of during a Terminus podcast. So, yeah, that's why I would use a second monitor, but I just don't have the room for it. And of course I could string it out, use a long HDMI cable, and just put it on a side table on the side of me, but at that point it's getting a little too clunky for me to actually want to deal with. If I'm gonna do something like that, I would very much rather make it a permanent solution than I really need a second monitor, let's just toss it over here so that I can use it. That doesn't make it worthwhile to me. It makes me not want to use it. So, similar to the comment about not... Hold on. Are these symmetrical? Front to back? No. Similar to the comment about not... or about using the plus sign to get the more commodities into a railcar. It's a great solution, but it doesn't actually solve the problems that are preventing a solution. Oh well. I appreciate the advice, and I would indeed love to do that, but unfortunately it's not in the cards. Not for me, at least. If this desk were to ever be rendered unusable for some reason and I had to get a replacement, I would probably consider getting a replacement desk that had enough size for it, but at the same time I might also get another antique desk, which this one is an antique, so that's why I'm not getting rid of it or changing it. To continue the comment, an idea for the Tuesday slot, you could do Transport Fever modded, since you said you would do that. Yeah, I did say I would do that. I am interested in filling the Tuesday slot with something, but the issue is, with as busy as my schedule is, it's sort of a pain in the neck to want to fill the Tuesday slot. That's really the next open slot. I did, War Chungus Wednesdays, or at least a stream on Wednesdays, for a good length of time, and honestly, I would like to do this as a stream, but that's a discussion for a little bit later, why I can't do that. Actually, I'll just sum it up in short. I can't turn this into a stream because I need the footage, and I'm not going to stream and record at the same time. I need the footage to compress down and use for the zombie train. If I didn't have to do that, like when I run out of zombie train questions, then this will become a 2-hour live stream of work instead of a 2-hour video of work. Not only does it mean that I can interact with people while I'm working, which is, I mean, it's a huge win for me, because I just want to interact with people. That's why I respond to these comments on the show. Crud. I was thinking. What was I saying? Yeah, it's a huge win because I get to interact with people on the show, or, during the course of the show, and I get to read things out loud and respond to things in real time, etc., etc. And you guys get to respond to me in real time, which is a secondary win, I suppose. But it means I have to do none of the processing. I have to do none of the, really anything. I just hit record, sit here for 2 hours, talk to the microphone, and when I'm done, it's done, and it's already on YouTube and whatever. It means I don't have an intro, which is kind of a shame, because the intro is nice. Well, it's nice because you guys get to see the map every time. That's really the reason why I like having the intro on there, because I can say, in the map, which you saw at the beginning of the episode. So nobody has to go and try to remember what Tolbrand is supposed to look like, or, ask me, or whatever. Not to say that I won't send you the Tolbrand map or the link to the Tolbrand file folder if you ask me, particularly if you're interested in helping out with the Reskin project. But, yeah, the thing that I would want to fill the Tuesday slot with, as I've mentioned before, ideally what I would want to fill the Tuesday slot with would be, as a matter of fact, it would be a stream of Tolbrand, of me working in Tolbrand, but of specifically me doing things that relate to operations and AI, and the other things that I can get away with doing while I'm not recording. That's the other thing. If I'm doing a stream and the game crashes, the stream will look at something else, or it'll look at a blank screen or whatever for a little while, and I can talk to people about whatever, and explain that it's going to be back up in a second and whatever. I feel like outages during a stream are much more forgivable than an outage during a video. And the other thing is, because it is a file that's going to just poof end up on YouTube, I don't need to worry about this longer video taking more time or whatever, and I can pretty much go to my heart's content in terms of making stuff, although I would still try to shoot for 2 hours of stream. The other things, I mean, there are various other reasons why that's good and bad and whatever. But again, it can't happen until I run out of questions for the zombie train, because I need the footage to compress down 8 times to actually put in the background of the zombie train. I would love to use different footage for that, but realistically there's only so much footage I'm going to be able to get in a week, and we come back around to the fact that I can't really fill the Tuesday slot because I don't have the free time. Yeah. Let's see, can I get an under construction thing? Not an underpass. House 3 under construction. Yeah, that's what I want. That's actually exactly what I want. To fill up that area right there. This is precisely what I was thinking of, exactly what I want. Okay, so we actually did the 3... Oh, wait, no, sorry, we didn't. We did 3 of the 4 things that I wanted to get done this week. We did all the rest of the fencing over here, we did the military base, and we did this park, if you can call it that. But what we did not do was the rail yard. The other thing I would like to start doing, as we run out of other scenery stuff to do, is start to work down along the banks. I would like to start working just north from here, along the sides of the river, and doing scenery along the sides of the river, because a lot of that won't be done with copy-pasted trees, I don't think. The only reason I say that is because the spaces are kind of awkward and the hills are kind of steep, and it may be more worth my while to, do things by hand along the edges. Also, I want mud. I want my mud. So let's go get that. I have to go over to the swamp for that. We haven't been back here in a while. Thinking. Alright, let's continue with the comment. Oh yeah, the other thing is, Transport Fever is just a horribly intensive game sometimes. And as much as I don't mind running a horribly intensive game, especially because I'm about to add more RAM to this computer. Also, sync. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. I feel like it runs at a performance way too quickly for me to want to bother, as much as I do love that game. If it had multiplayer, I'd be all over it. But this is not the mod that I was looking for. It really isn't. Damn it. Alright, let's just look for some other mud. Mud overgrown. Yeah, that looks fine to me. Alright. Moving right along. Yeah. I don't know. I do think that game is fantastic, but every time I boot it up, I can never bring myself to, like, actually play it. It's just one of those things where the performance hit is too much, and the time investment... I mean, when I'm doing it for a recording, that's different, but I think I'm kind of... of course, I could stream it, I suppose. I think I'm kind of past the point of, like, doing regular recordings, aside from this. Also, I'm sorry that I've been short on other live videos I haven't done. The timetable in a couple of weeks, I have just been busy on weekends, and by the time Monday rolls around, I sort of think, well, I missed it, I'll get it next time. You know. I did want to talk about all this sort of housekeeping stuff on the timetable. I need to remember to keep a document open so that I can write this stuff down and remember it later. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. That's not your problem, certainly. That's my own problem. I just want to talk about this stuff. I don't know when I would find the time to do those recordings, but they're fairly free-form, I suppose. I could just do them. Anytime I'm home where nobody else is here, all I have to do is crack open a document and read. There really isn't any preparation for it. And it's just an audio file, too, so that makes it even easier. You know, I don't have to go and record video and anything. I just pump it into Audacity and then upload the audio file, maybe with a picture. You know. I enjoyed the Minecraft when Ray was in it, but he hated doing it, too. Oh, yeah. Well, certainly towards the end. We're talking about the achievement hunters right now. I'm glad there are more people that are familiar with this, Icer. Again, you being one of them. I really did enjoy... I mean, I enjoyed Ray in content in general. He was great, and he still is great, as evidenced by how well he does as a streamer, which you mentioned. I haven't, like, started watching him as a streamer because generally I don't do a lot of stream watching. I'm just not available. Oh, yeah, right, I was airing my grievance about Twitch. I never even finished the statement there. For the record, if I ever do something like that, you guys have full freedom to go, hey, idiot, you didn't finish your statement here. As long as you provide me some context as to what I was talking about, I will gladly go back and explain what I was talking about and finish my statement. You can't rewind in streams. At least I couldn't find a way to. In YouTube, you can go back, like... Well, you can go all the way back to the beginning, I think. But you can go back, like, at least 4 hours in continuous live streams. Yeah, it's a really handy feature, because I would hear the Italian guy yell and not understand what he meant, but know that something was alarming, and so I would try to rewind to see what he was on about, and I wouldn't be able to see anything, so... that's my grievance with Twitch. I'm not about to move over to Twitch, I suppose, but then again, I was never really in danger of doing that. I was never really considering it, I should say. Endanger sounds like it's a bad thing, which, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing to say. I think it'd be pretty straight neutral if I was streaming everything. But I really do like how straightforward YouTube's streaming it is. It took me a minute to understand what really to do with it. But now that I know, and it's, like I said, fairly straightforward. There we go. I'm not even a little bit bewildered these days when I go into stream. Sometimes I screw things up, but I mean, really that's more of my mistake than a lack of understanding. Yeah, I now watch him play games on Twitch TV full-time for about 4 years now, since he makes his living doing that too. Talking about industrial area reminds me of the area up north on the PRR route that I know will be fun to switch out, because it's the marine terminal, plus the commercial buildings all around, with rail connection. Then you have the Reading industrial area too, which turns out to have a pit of switching, its own roundhouse, and a single track that is next to the NEC, but below as it service many industrial buildings. The SAP buildings, here's another solution that solves things but not in the way I want them to. The SAP buildings, could you lower the building into the ground and place your own track, or would it look weird? It's just a thought that could work out. But if you use some assets to cover up the weird spots, then it should be fine. I mean, honestly, I don't even need to do that. If we are talking about this, right? Ouch. If we are talking about this, then what I can do is I can use... I'll just grab a copy of this building for reference so that I don't screw up the one that's already there. So this is one of the SAP factories that is consistently vexing me. It's the appliance factory. And it has this piece of track here, which, as previously stated, connects to the industry, which has all these weird commodities that I can't use because I don't have a car that can carry them, because blah, 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 blah. I've talked about that at length. I opened a whole show with talking about the comment about it. What I can do, though, if I want to put my own multiple industry here, he's saying what ICER is suggesting, which is actually quite clever, but unnecessary, is to do this. Lower it to the ground. And now you can't even tell that there's a piece of track there, and I could put my own multiple industry right here. Oh, multi-industry, I suppose. Which, I mean, it does make the building kind of sit a little lower in the water, as it were. The building has flooded 2 of 4 compartments and is in danger of going down. But it does mean that I could, it doesn't really look that bad, although the platform's kind of stubby now. It does mean that I could have an industry here that was tailored to my own, but still use the building. But, alternately, instead of doing that, what I could actually just do is, well, I'm going to use the long industry just for the sake of it, because it's easier to work with, because it's bigger. I could just place my industry right over top of it. Right there or so. Give myself just enough room that what else I can do is I can just do this. And now I can connect to my other piece of track with regular track. And nobody will ever know. And it doesn't look silly because it's sunken into the ground. So that's another way to do it, but that isn't what I want to do. I could, of course, but the thing is that if I'm really concerned just about the commodities, there are still commodities in here that I can use. For example, steel coils, which those are things that I already know how to work with. Even I think the electronic components, I believe I might have a car that uses those, and of course the general goods, which I've got plenty of cars that use those. So I would just not use any of the unique commodities to the building. That's an option as well. But really the thing is that I want to, because it's not every day you get to use these really cool, really specific commodities in any real manner, in any really useful fashion. In part because it's there's so much of a pain in the SCP Industries. They sort of look a little daunting when you open up it, but if you read all the settings, it's fairly straightforward. If anybody wants me to give like a tutorial on how I'm fairly sure you use them, I mean, I can do that. I haven't actually set one up yet, but I think I know how it should go. It's not overly complicated. It looks a little daunting, but it's not overly complicated. Every minute it cycles, and it adds those things to its queues or commodities or whatever that you've told it to add, and subtracts the things that it's told to subtract. And I don't think even one depends on the other. They just sort of all go, which is useful in a way, and not useful in other ways. But, again, doesn't really matter. I suppose you can use a self-referential power station rule if you really wanted to, or if you really care that much, you can make a multiple industry and use the exact same commodities in using the manner that I just displayed. So, there are a lot of options to deal with that not doing exactly what you want it to do, or not being precisely the way that you hoped it would, or if you don't have the cars for it, getting around it. Getting around its very existence. You know what, I don't like this. I thought I was going to like them sort of hanging into the water a little bit, but turns out I hate it. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to get around that. But, unfortunately, none of them really solve the problem of I can't use those commodities. It's not that I can't use the buildings, it's that I can't use the commodities, because I really do want to use the commodities. Okay, let's go back down to Mason's Landing for a second and check to make sure that we're using what I think we're using as the ballast on the branch line. So, that way when I go and build a branch line up there, ouch, I can, go and do the thing. Excuse me. Yeah, we are. Okay, I kind of figured it was going to be this dirt. But, I mean, it's my go-to dirt, really, for ballast and stuff like that. It actually is ballast. Sink. If it ever falls out of sync, I just want to have a sync point. I mean, honestly, I should be doing that at the half hour, just to be consistent about it, so I don't have to go looking through the video to check. And if it's close enough, then I usually don't bother, and so the sync points might be kind of off. But here's the thing, you're just listening to me talk for 2 hours, and also I'm building in the background. There's really nothing time critical. I'm not going to spoil anything by yelling like, whoa, right before something crazy happens, because there really isn't that much crazy that can happen. It's a train simulator, not a first-person shooter, and furthermore, it's trains. It's not like Railworks, I guess, where you can get crazy derailments where stuff goes flying. We only have the boring variety. I don't complain about the derailments too much. And, on top of that, we just kind of are playing in Surveyor. So if there's a derailment here in Surveyor, that's even less noteworthy, because they just will shift the cars around and get them back on the track. It's not exactly rocket surgery to deal with a derailment in Surveyor. And, I mean, the amazing thing would be if I actually managed to cause one. That's kind of the difficult part. But, I mean, I've done it before, so it could hypothetically happen again. Okay. I'm not going to eat it right now. Okay, well, it's going to be cold. Well, thank you. She made pizza. Alright, have fun. She's now going to take her friend home from work, because she is following in my footsteps and being a chauffeur for all of her friends. I actually find it quite amusing, but unfortunately it does get in the way of a couple of things. We were supposed to... Well, she was supposed to be on this episode, and before we made the episode, we were supposed to make Nuka-Cola from the recipe book, the Fallout recipe book. Which I've never had dark soda. I'm not really interested in dark soda. you know, I guess I'm racist, but I, you know, just haven't bothered, but I will try the Nuka-Cola. By the same token, I don't drink, but a lot of the drinks in the Fallout cookbook are alcoholic drinks. And I kind of want to try them just for the sake of trying Fallout drinks. But at the same time, I really don't want to find out what Drunk Ellis is like, so, you know, it's a toss-up for me. Is there any more to this comment? No, yeah, no, we talked about that's. I really appreciate you guys trying to come up with solutions for the problems that I'm having or whatever. I wish they were more applicable. The issues that are going on between difficulties streaming, whatever they may be, which, I mean, I really don't have too many difficulties streaming. Let's get the kind of patchy grass. Difficulties using these commodities, all that stuff. I really, really, really do appreciate you guys coming with answers, because eventually, or maybe not eventually, you know, it's not that far off, and I probably have received pretty good answers to problems before. I just can't recall one off the top of my head, unfortunately. You know, eventually I will receive a really good solution to a problem that I'm having that I had not even considered. And I don't think it's going to be that crazy when that happens. I think it's just going to be sort of like oh, you know, I didn't think of that. That was, you know, silly me. You know, and thank you for the advice, you know, to whomever it is that gives me the advice. But until then, I really appreciate it, and I don't want people to think that, you know, their words don't mean anything to me because the problems either can't be solved in that manner because of things that I am otherwise wanting, or, you know, whatever. That means I don't want the comments in the first place. I really do. And it also gives me the chance, you know, to, oh, for God's sake, every time I open the menu, to talk about why the problems I'm having are problems and why I haven't executed these certain solutions and things like that. You know, the commodities thing, that's, you know, two people this episode, Icer and PRR Productions, both tried to help me out with that. It's just the answers that I was given aren't, you know, they aren't what I need and what I want for the situation. Or, well, they're really not what I want, just in general, for the situation. No, they're not like, oh, I don't need that. Because I do need a solution. It's just, you're solving the wrong problem. Or making it not a problem in the case of not using those industries. I would love to have those commodities, really, is what it boils down to. That's why I'm being such a pain in the neck about the thing, because they are really great commodities. I really treasure all of these commodities that I do get to play with, because I want to have more unique stuff in the map than just logs and lumber and two kinds of general goods being shuffled back and forth across the planet. I want something substantial, and I want a lot of unique commodities. I want a lot of things where it's like, oh, that's really cool. That's really unusual or unconventional or innovative, that, you know, it's this instead of this. I don't know. Maybe it's a lost cause, but I think that the solution that I'm proposing is really not all that difficult to execute. It's just, you know, it's not like I'm breaking a limitation, I'm trying to push a limitation of the game or anything. I just want to use these commodities. And I want to be able to auto-load them into cars that are coming out of portals and stuff like that. And it's not even that I know I'm going to need to do that, it's that I know I might have to. I might have to. Of course, I could do some wonky workarounds, etc., but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that in particular. Something also that might be worthwhile because it's a 24-hour session consisting of the same trains over the course of a day running again and again, instead of having portals that are set up to do certain things and put train in an automated like train creator, which I've taken to call him the train stacker, I could alternately just have a long return loop from north to south in the map that the trains sort of peruse, and then every train has a looping thing, but wouldn't really work for a number of reasons. Cars getting handed up. I'd basically be building another yard to restore the trains to their original configuration before they came back online. And that would probably take a lot more programming pain in the neck than the current programming pain in the neck hypothetical of building the train stacker itself. Which I already have a proof of concept, or I had a proof of concept built, although I will again have to sort of stress out the game to make that happen, to make that work. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do about it and how I'm going to overcome some of the challenges, but I do know how I did in the past. The reason that I'm hesitant about using that solution again is because it's a little bit janky. There are no if-then statements in Tane, or in trains at all, in programming trains. So I can't just say, hey, if these things are happening, or, if you need these cars, don't couple to these instead. And that statement on its own has like multiple levels of advance to it. Knowing what cars you need, for example, is another, that's an interesting one. Generally, it's just, okay, go pick up cars from this location. Or go pick up this specific car, which doesn't work with cars coming out of portals, because the only cars you can select are cars that already exist in the world. And have an open coupler, I might add. You can't select cars in the middle of a train for a couple command, which is why the couple at track mark command is so useful. But, it is what it is. So it means that either the cars that are coming out of the portals will either have to come out at a very sort of rigid rate, and I will have to deal with them, as in I'll have a switcher that's designed to take care of the cars that we don't need by disposing them into another portal or something. Alternately, I have the cars come out whenever there's a space, so it's refilling the gap that an empty that has been left by a shunter coming picking up a set of cars. The thing that I don't know is if a portal will produce a train without an engine. And I know a portal will not produce a train if it is being blocked by something, but if a portal produces a train without an engine, I think it gets pushed out at a constant speed until it comes to a point where it stops. And then I think it may sit there, and this is all hypotheticals because I've never done this part of it before, I think it may sit there until something comes along and takes it away and leaves room for the next set of cars, because I know a portal will not get rid of, or it will not spawn a new consist if there's one currently blocking the output. I don't know what blocking the output exactly means to a portal, but that's sort of what I mean by stressing it out. The best solution would probably be to have a train produce, or to have a portal produce a set of cars 10 cars long every hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever is necessary to keep up with demand at the train stacker, and just have the train stacker's switch engines, maybe more than one, push those cars down a hill and into a pit if they aren't needed, or to take them and carry them into an exit portal. At which point there needs to be a replenishment of locomotives, which is another matter entirely. I think that having them roll up to a hill and uncouple and letting the cars roll down on their own. If you uncouple before the engine has stopped, like if you don't give like a 5-second buffer before the uncouples command, then it will just uncouple the cars sort of on the fly, and it's the best you can get in terms of getting close to a flying switch for the AI to do, which is rather difficult, as you might expect. And doing it on a slope would really be the only way to ensure that the cars will then roll down the hill. And if I have them roll down, I could have them roll down to just a dead end and then derail, but then I would get a bunch of derail messages in the chat, which I don't want, because they would interfere with actual derailment messages, which I keep an eye out for during testing, because you know that something's gone wrong when you see one of those pop up. So, yeah, that's my main hesitation with doing that, so I could have them roll down into an outgoing portal, or just a portal that doesn't accept trains, or, whatever. Anything that will dispose of them, anything that will get rid of them. And a portal works just fine for that purpose, and that's probably what I'll use. If I ensure that the portal, that A, I can let them roll down the hill into a portal successfully, and B, that the portal will accept an engineless train rolling towards it. I don't know if either of those things will work. I hope they will, but I am not certain. I've never tested that. Either way, it seems like a sort of janky thing to do, because if the engine were to come to a complete stop before letting the set of cars roll away down the hill into the disposal portal, then you have a set of cars sitting on the hill blocking the switchers from disposing of the next cut of cars. So, really, it's not an ideal solution, and again, depends on game jankiness, and that's really what I'm trying to avoid with thinking up new solutions for how to make the train stacker work effectively. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. There's a lot of brain that needs to happen. And I think... I don't know. I think that there is certainly a way through it, and I also think that I've not come up with the perfect solution yet. Or the best solution, I should say. Nothing's going to be perfect. Even the best solution is probably going to involve me and tens of thousands of commands. So, certainly pushing the limit of what the game can do, and also pushing the limit of what I can do, which has really been the spirit of Tollbrand this whole time. In the beginning, it was just the original plan, the thought process was, I want to build a route that is of realistic size, and has a realistic run between towns, because that was the main thing that upset me about the Iron Horseman Railroad, is that despite my efforts, everything is really close together, and that's really nobody else's fault anyway. I say that like, I tried so hard and people screwed it up. That's not really what happened. I did set a scale, but the scale I set was still too small, and ended up with, like I said, towns being kind of close together nonetheless. And by extension, the grades were incredibly steep. That's the other thing that people sort of, and by people I mean me, I didn't really sort of think about when I was planning the route. I went, okay, this town's going to be at this height, this one's going to be at this height, this one's going to be at this height. This is how far these things are apart. I didn't actually sit down to think, okay, what grades did I just imply by putting together all these arbitrary numbers? And, by consequence, is this actually a feasible railroad that I just designed? Turns out the answer is, sort of. It definitely had some steep parts, It's certainly not as crazy as the craziest main lines in the world, or in the US, even. It's still, in the grand scheme, more sedate than Tennessee Pass. But certainly something difficult to use when you're working with the engine complement of the Iron Horseman Railroad, and not just an easy route to run in general. I mean, we have talked a little. We never had the discussion about why Tennessee Pass is so difficult to run, but part of it is the fact that it's just so damn steep. It is a difficult railroad to run, or it's a difficult pass to run because it takes a lot of horsepower to get anything significant over Tennessee Pass. And, you know, there are certainly points in time where that was easier or harder. It's easier now than it ever has been, but when you have something like the Moffat Road as the alternative, it really doesn't make sense to use. Anyway, that's you know, that's more for the Tennessee Pass discussion. That will, I'm sure, happen someday. So, you know, don't hold your breath, but keep your fingers crossed, is maybe the best way to phrase that. Because I am certainly looking forward to it. I am someone who wants to do that discussion. Mostly because I want to see what will come out of it, you know? I want to see what the real arguments are on either side. Oh, crap, what have I done here? I'm just realizing how high this is lifted up because of the way that it's bent. What the hell did I do? Yeah, okay, so we're not doing that. I was gonna very subtly cover that. Oh, you know what? No, I'll still do it. Hold on. Let me just do it like this. Remove gradient. Oh wait, no, wrong button. Add the spline point. Remove the gradient with this tool. So now it'll stick to the ground. And this part will still be more or less using a gradient, and so I can do that, which is really what I wanted to do. I wanted to make it so that you could drive over this, and I'm probably going to add gravel there instead of anything else, as well as some other gravel around here. We have another 15 minutes or so, a little bit less than that, to finish this area, and then I could call it mission accomplished and fly the big banner. You know, that's, you know, that would actually be pretty good. I was skeptical. I set the goal, the bar pretty high for today in terms of getting stuff done. Which, in a way, well, I won't say I'm glad that Madison didn't come on, because I really wish that she could have. But I know that we probably wouldn't have gotten all of this done had Madison come on. If she was going to come on, I was going to go and do something different. I was probably going to do something maybe a little bit more interesting, and that she could actually provide some more input on versus what I'm doing right now, which is really not something that requires a lot of input. Although, you know, doing something like this is certainly her speed, doing this texture work. Yeah. This just looks too smooth, you know, this whole thing here where you've got grass in between these sets of rails, it looks way too good. It looks like I'm bracketing the sets of rails with the grass, which is, or sorry, all the way around. Bracketing grass with the sets of rails, which isn't what I was intending to do. It just happened to come out that way because of the way the rails are bent. But either way, I think no matter what, sorry, my mustache is making my face itch. That means I have to shave. A little. I have to trim, I should say. I have to, just sort of sporadically put grass in the rest of this yard because it looks far too uniform with the dirt, and the grass does look good the way it is. Agilius is inviting me to play Rainbow Six, which, I mean, he could have just messaged me and asked me what I was up to, and I would have explained that I'm doing under construction right now and I can't, but I will a little later. But I can't explain that to him because he didn't actually talk to me, he just sent me an invite. And I knew that this was going to happen because I saw him and TBA and Weibold all go into Rainbow Six. And I noticed they started a call. They probably assume that I'm going to join. Now, unfortunately, I am unavailable for the next 10 minutes or so. while I make railroad history here and completing this in this amount of time. Okay, maybe it's not railroad history, but it certainly feels like it. Let's get some gravel in here. Let's polish this thing off. Let's put the polish on it, as my favorite Ivanism goes, or one of my favorites. My favorite non-Russian Ivanism. It's just sort of a weird translation click that happens, and the episode in which he says that is not even aired yet. It's not even recorded. It's like well into season 3, but you put the polish on it, or but you put the polish on it. I don't know. It sounds really good to me. It sounds really kind of funny, and you know, unique as an Ivanism is, where he just says a certain thing which otherwise wouldn't be remarkable on its own, but because it is what it is, it's because of the almost mistranslation, if you can call it that, then it's, you know, it feels more appropriate and it is funnier. Let's do this. And the other thing I want to do, so I've got this gravel over here. It doesn't look great, honestly. I could probably do a better job of doing the gravel. But let's cut that back to past the edge of the turntable. And I want one more building. I don't know what, but I want some sort of building to go there. It's got to be something that's only tangentially railroad related. So maybe like a small office. But I don't know what would necessarily go there. We've got 9 minutes to figure it out. Or so. Okay. That works. It's gonna be bigger than I thought. Oh no, it's not. That actually kind of works. But at the same time, I don't really like it. It seems almost too big. I don't know. I'm just looking at offices now and going, no. This is better than I could have hoped for. I just wish the door was on the other side. And let's do one thing and drag these into the edge there. Also kind of means that I can get rid of those buffers and replace them with invisible signals or something of that sort. Let me just make sure I can actually use this building real quick. I have the content manager open. This is Office with Ramp Old 1. It looks really nice. But, oh no, it's built in. Okay, excellent. That's almost better than I could have hoped for, really. Okay, clear this. There's no office texture, I would assume. I learned the difference between assume and presume, and I didn't realize, because I would hear one or the other, and I wanted to know which one was correct, but basically so I can call people out like a grammar Nazi. No, it's not the reason. It's just an added bonus. No, I wanted to know which one was correct for certain situations, and I learned that when you assume, it's based on nothing, and when you presume, you are doing something based on evidence. So, you'd say, oh, I presume that blah, 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 if you already have an idea about something, and that's why you are presuming. But if you do not have an idea about something, you are assuming. It's like, oh, well, I assumed that, I assume that blah 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 would mean that you didn't really have information on this subject or this topic, but you thought that this was a certain way. Basically without reason. An assumption is a guess. A presumption is an educated guess. There you go. I mean, and it's rare that you really make a guess on anything without some sort of knowledge on the situation, or, I was about to say some prior ideas, but that would be an assumption. Or, some prior assumptions. But having prior assumptions does not mean that your guess is a presumption. If it's only on the backs of assumptions, it's still an assumption. Not that anyone's really going to care. Maybe your English teacher would. But, I should need to go visit my teachers. The ones that got me into... Or the ones that put me where I am today, Gotta tell them I own a house. First mortgage bill came in the mail, by the way. It's sitting right in front of me. I'm so excited to pay this thing. I'm really not excited at all. So we need to get a parking lot. Gravel parking lot, because, too cool for pavement. By too cool, I mean too cheap. So there's going to be a road, quote-unquote, that wraps around in this direction. I want to make sure this is like the same level of fuzziness so it doesn't look out of place. And because we're filling in things the way we are, of course, there is going to be some significant blockiness. And this is not Minecraft. So, yeah. Let's put some of this grass around the back of the building here. And I also don't want it to look like I just slapped down the base coat and then went, okay, and let's pour some grass on it, and did that. I want to, I of course want it to look realistic. If you can discern what I did to create a thing, that's fine, but I don't want it to be blatantly obvious that I did XYZ to create this look. I want it to sort of be viewed as, oh wow, that looks really good, and not like, oh look, there's this texture on this texture on this texture doing this, etc. Because that, if you're sitting there and it's clear how it's created, it sort of takes away from the creation, I think. At least it's much easier to take away from it, if that's the case. Oh, you know what? I just realized that this thing has got a door on this side. I thought it was on the other side. Oh, it's on both sides, actually. Let's just do that up to that side. Alright, and then we need the grass, and that really should be it, because we've got 2 minutes left in the episode. So, this is actually going to be really cool to show off. So I typically post, it's inconsistent as to where, but I typically post 2 pictures of teasers of what I worked on in a given episode. So this is probably going to be one of them. I actually very much like the way this came out, even though this building here is a little bit out of era looking, but it does look really good where it is. It sort of stands out because you've got the reddish and the reddish and then the gray. But, I mean, I'm going to put some tougher bushes around this, I think, in the future, if I come back to the area. Also, I don't have a narrow gauge turntable still. If you guys have any ideas for a narrow gauge turntable and roundhouse, feel free to say so. I'm probably going to end up using one of the ones that are built in, but once I really boil down what I'm doing on that side of the river in terms of equipment, then we'll do that. I think I might even hold off on texturing a lot of this area until farther down the line, once we have built more of the Geiger Mountains. But that's just really a thought. The future phases are extending the main line of the Gilson Eastern, then extending the main line of the VMR, and building the twin branch lines. Those are the next 2 phases. That's phases 3 and 4. And then I suppose the phase after that would be either to extend the VMR further and connect to the Geiger Mountains, way up there somewhere, which I don't have the name of the town yet, I don't think. Or extending the main line of the Gilson Eastern even further along the coast, one more segment getting closer to Gilson City. Based on all the work that's gone in here, not really looking forward to Gilson City, but certainly looking forward to the product. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to leave any comments down below, and I'll talk about them next time. Trainman out. Oh wait, I'm the Admiral now. I don't have a good sign-off for that. I need to see what I used on the other channel. Anyway, sayonara.